Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As Muslims, we need to be acquainted with the various preaching directives of Islam and the way they relate to us in our various capacities. Now, there is a very serious misconception which prevails amongst many academic circles as well as the common masses regarding the spread of Islam in the earliest age. It is often, or it is more often than not stated by many people that Islam was spread by the sword in the early areas, in the early times, and the companions of the Prophet actually conquered many lands by force, and by conquering them, they actually wanted to spread and enforce Islam in those areas. Now, this whole endeavor of the Sahaba, of the companions of the Prophet, needs to be considered in the light of the Quran, and we have to analyze this endeavor in the light of the Quran, because we are absolutely sure that the Sahaba, the companions, as well as the Prophet himself, they were of course following the Quran while they were subjugating various countries. So, what does the Quran say? Does it really say that Islam was spread by the sword? Does it really say that Islam was actually imposed on various people in this manner? Now, if we study the Quran, we will see that there is a specific law which is described in it and which relates to the messengers of God. And before I describe that law, another thing which needs to be understood is that the most important thing for a person to realize is the fact that he is going to be answerable before God one day. Now, this answerability, this accountability, is something which he must always remain aware of, because this will actually make him a better person. Now, people often tend to forget this accountability of the hereafter. They are elusive of the hereafter. The Quran has made this arrangement, this historical arrangement. The Almighty, in fact, has made this historical arrangement that in the times of the messenger of God, He has created certain lesser days of judgment in this world in the times of His messengers, so that these lesser days of judgment can become a substantiation of that greater day of judgment which will take place for the whole world one day and all the people who were ever born here. Now, the details of this law has been mentioned in the Quran in various details, and in a nutshell, it is described that people who deliberately deny the truth, who intentionally deny the truth in the times of their messengers of God, who make this truth evident to them, they are punished in this world for this arrogance. And people who embrace faith and people who profess faith in the messenger of God, they are of course rewarded. And this reward and punishment becomes a substantiation, a corroboration of the fact that a greater reward and punishment is going to take place in the hereafter. And this reward and punishment in this world takes place in the times of the messengers of God on their immediate addressees, before whom they deliver the truth. Now, this is what happened in the case of the last prophet of God also. We know in the times of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people who denied the truth deliberately, who intentionally denied the truth, they were punished in various categories. Now, amongst this category were people who lived in the adjacent lands of Arabia as well, and to them the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent his messengers. He sent his letters to these leaders, or these chiefs or rulers of these countries, who were 8 or 9 in total number. And they were told that they have to profess faith in the messenger of God and to embrace faith. And if they do not do so, then they'll have to face the wrath of the Almighty through the swords of the believers. So therefore, if we sum up the whole endeavor, we can say that this was nothing but the implementation of punishment of deliberately denying the truth, which was meted out to these various countries. And of course, this was initiated by the Prophet himself. And we know that in the 6th Hijri, or around about the 6th Hijri, he sent letters to these neighboring countries, to the rulers of these neighboring countries, and called upon them to profess faith in Islam. And if they do not do so, of course, they will have the required time to contemplate. However, if after a certain time they do not profess faith and intentionally deny the truth, then they will be subjugated. And this is what actually took place in the earliest part of Islam. So therefore, we cannot say, it would be incorrect to say that Islam was spread by the sword. It was never spread by the sword. There was no question of any dawah or spreading the Islam in those times by this means. What actually the whole endeavor can be looked through is that primarily the companions of the Prophet, while trying to complete his mission, they were not conquering people actually, they were punishing people because they had intentionally denied the truth. This punishment, of course, is going to take place in the hereafter for all mankind. But as I said earlier, in order to make this a lesson and as a reminder for the rest of the people, this punishment of the immediate adversaries of a messenger of God throws light on the fact, it highlights the fact that this same punishment will be meted out to the rest of the mankind when the hereafter comes. So therefore we can say that the whole interpretation that Islam was spread by the sword in the time of the Sahaba is not correct at all. It was not spread at all in this way. What can be said is that these countries or these areas to which the letters had been written by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they had been delivered the truth to its ultimate extent, and they were warned that if they do not accept Islam, in spite of the fact that they're convinced of it, then they'll have to face, they can of course remain on their own religion, and by paying jizya and by remaining subservient to the Muslim territory, to the Muslim ruler. However, they cannot live independently in this. They cannot rule those territories because they have been delivered the truth to the ultimate extent. And now if they would deny it, then they'll face the wrath of God in the form of the punishment which was meted out to them by the Sahaba through their swords. So we can finally sum up and say that it is incorrect to say that Islam was spread by the sword. What actually happened in the earliest times was that people who had intentionally denied the truth, people who had deliberately denied the truth, they were convinced of the truth and they still denied it, they were meted out this punishment of subjugation. They were meted out this punishment of subjugation, and they were called upon to remain subservient to the Islamic State. So therefore, this was not an act of spreading Islam, it was actually an act of punishing people who had intentionally denied the truth. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات.